Hey everyone, this is Andy Hall. You are watching an episode of The Best Advice Ever. The Best Advice Ever is the show where awesome people come on and they talk about the best advice they ever got. Today with me is Barry Purcell, I believe. Purcell? Oh man, I asked Barry beforehand how to pronounce it. I think I got close to it. Barry is a writer, contributor to a variety of different magazines, and we're actually going to be talking about one of his pieces before we talk about the best advice ever. Barry, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fine, thank you. How are you?
So far, so good.
Good. You should feel free to pronounce my name any way you see fit. That's what we agreed before the show. So you have correctly interpreted the instructions.
Well, good. I like interpreting things well. So as people may be able to guess from your accent, you are not here. You are not from the States.
I'm not from the States. I am from the Republic of Ireland.
The Republic of Ireland, right. Very good. And how is everything faring over there between COVID, Brexit, and
we're
all that?
In the middle of our third wave.
The third wave, yeah.
We have instigated various degrees of shutdowns, and we're in level 5 restrictions from the day after Christmas, when presumably people will decide to return home from whatever family events they're doing. Then we're into a pretty long shutdown through most of January, I believe. And that's okay. That's how we reduced the numbers the last 2 times. And as soon as we opened up, they're following the numbers and the medical advice, which I guess is all you can do.
Yeah, true enough. And is Brexit affecting anything over in the Republic?
Well, the English approach is, and I say this with no small degree of schadenfreude, inferior. It's been something of a disaster from farm to fork, their approach to dealing with the COVID-19 difficulty. And because we have a land border with the United Kingdom, which is a matter of historical difficulty, it's going to be difficult to develop an all-island strategy such as you would have in New Zealand, which is easy enough to just shut all the borders, close everything down for a few weeks, and then have zero COVID anywhere. But we have a land border which we'd be very reluctant to shut down because it would involve a psychological effect on people everywhere, and it might actually kick off a war. So,
it's interesting because from what little I understand about what's going on over there with Brexit is that the border would actually, or the new border between Britain and the EU would actually be in the sea between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK.
Well, that is one of the suggestions. Yes, we're trying to avoid a war. Do you understand? It doesn't matter what the actual reality is. It's all about symbols. Like at this stage in Northern Ireland, it's all about symbols. It's all about pictures and the way things look and optics and how people feel about things. It's not about reality.
I'm glad that people are people no matter where they are, and it isn't just here in the States.
Very powerful. Symbols are very powerful in Northern Ireland.
That's an interesting way to pivot into this. I wanted to touch on this article that you wrote about titled "The Statutes of Limitations."
The statues.
The statues. Thank you. I
put a lot of work into that title.
It's
the title came before the article, I have to be honest.
And the subtitle is Winston Churchill and the Quest to Find the Right Standard for Public Memorialization. Yes. A lot of people don't realize what kind of people know the myth of Winston Churchill.
Yes, the man, the myth, the legend, the alcoholic. Yes.
High-functioning alcoholic, from what I understand.
Absolutely high-functioning, but definitely alcoholic. He took a letter with him to the Americas when he visited America, and he had a letter with him from his doctor that says, Mr. Churchill has a condition which requires at least X milliliters of whiskey every day. That's alcoholism. It's called alcoholism, the condition you're referring to.
Right.
But high-functioning, as you said.
The doctor's note makes everything okay.
Makes everything better.
Yeah. So what were you trying to communicate in this article?
That article was a response to another article on that same website. And how it started was, I saw this article, and I sometimes on Twitter reflexively tweet things without putting much thought into it. And I saw this article saying, those Black Lives Matter people are vandals and they're destroying statues and they're trying to erase history in England and so on. And I said, my ass, up and down. And then the editor of that magazine, Arc Digital, a man called Bernie Belvedere, very kindly tweeted me back and said, he's a very calm and patient person. He said, I look forward to your article on that. And I was like, that's what we're doing now. So that's how I wrote that article. It was a response to the suggestion that it was vandalism and that these people are idiots roaming in the countryside looking for white people to destroy.
And what was so Winston Churchill?
Winston Churchill.
What? Because there was a statue of him
Yes.
that was defaced.
Defaced, publicly defaced. Well,
And-
sorry.
No, go ahead.
What baked my cookies, what peeled my tangerines about that was he's lionized in England as a war hero, which of course, he's a hero of the war, so technically is a war hero. But in Ireland, we would have a different perspective, having been subject to various iterations of the British Army for the last 900 years. And he did other things as well, which were less than cute and cuddly and less than Nazi fighter. Sure. I mean, the British Army did dangle shiny objects, at the Nazis long enough for Stalin to win the war. But there was other things going on as well. Sorry, you're going to get in trouble?
No, okay? Because that's exactly, there's just so many things we agree on. And just you touching on the fact that Stalin won the war. That's a whole different episode. But yes. I totally agree with that.
Well, don't take it out. Take the heat out of it. Don't say Stalin if you want to. If you make it easier for the Americans, say that the Red Communists won the war. If I say something that you think is actionable, put your hand up like that, and I will stop immediately.
Okay.
He caused the Bengal famine, where he pretty much took rice from Indians to give it to army people, English army people, and the people in India starved as a result. That was a pretty easy thing, whereas the famine in Ireland in the 1840s was caused more by general difficulty with capitalism and rents and so on. But it wasn't as clear cut as what happened in Bengal, and that was a Winston Churchill joint. Also, while he was Home Secretary, he sent a group called the Black and Tans into Ireland, who were a gang of vicious, murdering bastards who did nothing but recruit people into the Irish independence effort during the 1920s. They burnt down cities and shot at civilians at football matches, etc., etc. And he was responsible for that. And I could go on, but it seems odd to put a statue up to something like this, or to the very least, Britons, meaning British people, regularly vote this man the greatest Briton ever, ahead of people like King Arthur and genuinely amazing Britons. So, I mean, this is why I believe these things have to be said, not because I hate Winston Churchill, but because of it's more of a response than me laying out a claim,
Right. Because it seems foolish for those people who say that when you put up a statue of someone like Winston Churchill, you're teaching history.
Yes.
Because, and I think you made this point wonderfully, it's more propaganda than history.
Absolutely. Well, that's the problem, because it was a problem I had with the reports. They were saying that the defacement of the vandalism of these statues, and Winston Churchill wasn't the only statue that got defaced, another statue of a known slave trader got pulled down. And they were saying, well, that's a political act to destroy the statues, as if putting up the statues was not a political act. Right? Right. And that's really, if I could have one takeaway from that many-word article, it would be, if you think tearing down statues is a political act, you have not considered the reality that putting up the statues is a political act that is allowed to have a response.
True enough. What was the response to your article like?
It was all right. I mean, you get a few. There's always, Britain now, because of Brexit, the imperialist colonialists feel like they can pop out of the woodwork and say things like, I'd like to hear more gratitude from Ireland about what we did for them. I'm serious. They say things like, well, we gave you an infrastructure. I said, yes, the better with which to steal our stuff. We give you a justice system. Yes, the better to prosecute people who protested about you stealing our stuff. And pretty much all the gifts of empire were donated to us, the better, to make more efficient the machine they had for extracting everything from our economy. And not just in Ireland, but in everywhere any country ever had any imperial colony. Anywhere, any country.
Yeah. There is this myth of Britain having the good empire.
Yes, I read Niall Ferguson's book.
Niall Ferguson. What do you think about Niall Ferguson?
The imperialist, the imperial colonialist. I read his book and I didn't actually vomit, but I was thinking about it. I was thinking, yes, but look at all these wonderful things that India has now. India has a justice system and it has a railroad network. And I'm like, yeah, but it's like saying that, Mussolini made the trains run on time, but yeah, look where they were going, anyway, I disapprove.
I saw him on Fareed Zakaria on CNN, and I just reconfirmed all of my thoughts about Mr. Ferguson. At the worst, he's unoriginal. At the best, he's unoriginal, and at worst, an imperialist. Maybe he's just an unoriginal imperialist, which I think is more or less common for imperialists? I don't know.
I think he's engaged in a degree of confirmation bias.
Oh, yeah.
But then again, as I said to you before in the green room when we were discussing things, aren't we all? So I can't exactly claim to be, well, particularly in that article, I can't claim to be free of confirmation bias, even in the article you're discussing either, so I'm not going to pretend I don't do it.
Right. True enough. Yeah. Well, we've both done comedy before, and we were saying that
Yes.
at least with comedy, it gives us maybe a different perspective to look at ourselves.
When you stand on a stage in front of people with a microphone and invite criticism, which anybody in comedy does, on the hop, live, you are forced to consider. You can't think you're wonderful and do stand-up comedy at the same time. There will be self-loathing stage. There has to be, right? Where you think everything you do is terrible, regardless of how funny it is.
Right.
Particularly if you've worked hard on it, you know it's funny, you deliver it perfectly, nothing. Zip. Crickets. You would long for crickets. Even the crickets are quiet, It's like, okay, am I not funny? What's wrong with me? Am I the worst person ever? And then your friends say, no, that was funny, and et cetera, et cetera. You know the process. I don't need to tell you, right?
Oh, yeah. Especially when the joke landed well, maybe a week ago, and you do the same thing with a different crowd. And it's like,
when you deliver it perfectly.
Perfectly.
Yeah. And nothing. Because of something that happened beforehand that didn't involve you at all, an audience needs to be in a certain headspace as well. You figured that out pretty quickly.
Definitely. So, great article. I'm going to leave a link to the article.
Thank you.
Later, and in the description too, for people to take a look at. It's definitely worth your time.
Thank you very much.
It says on Medium, it's like a 6-minute read. I blew through it much faster than 6 minutes.
Well, now you're just bragging.
Well, maybe it's just because I don't understand a lot of things.
I blew through the bits. Yeah, you skipped over all the big words.
All the big words. Blah, blah. Barry's going to explain this stuff to me when we're hanging out anyway. So
it took me that long to write it. No, that's not true.
Barry, let's talk about the best advice you ever got.
Right. You told me to think about the best advice I ever got when we discussed this before. And my initial thought was, I have lots of advice that I've got, but it was generally from people like Socrates or people who were long dead or unavailable to me. And then I started thinking about, that's probably not what you wanted. So I was thinking about the best advice I got from somebody personally known to me. And I thought about when I went to university. My mother sat me down and she said, I was socially awkward and I hadn't spoken much to girls before I went to university. And she said, Barry, you're going to want to talk to girls. And I said, thank you for noticing. And she said, people are going to tell you that there's a certain thing you should do and so on, and you should be yourself, and it might be, and don't worry about anything. But she said, you can't do that. She said, don't be yourself. She said, you have to pretend to be normal before you hit them with the full Barry. And I think that might have been the most wonderful thing anybody ever said to me, because she said it with love, because she loved me and she understood me and she knew the problems I was having and the way out of it.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant. The idea that you have to pretend a bit, right? Yes.
And I think when I learned afterwards that the idea of do you want to get into it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The idea of a personality might be fictional, and that we all present different versions of ourselves depending on who we're talking to. I'm not talking to you the way I would talk to my lawyer, the way I would talk to a lady I wanted to impress, the way I want to talk to my dad. And if we're presenting different forms of ourselves to pretty much everybody or classes of people that we're talking to, then those classes of people will have different understanding of what we are like, what I am like as a person, right? Yeah. Now, what that means is it's very possible that the idea of a personality is fictional just on the face of it. And the only reason we have a personality is because it's a series of reflections of what we're expecting other people to do when they react to us. And it might be a modeling system for how we want other people to react to us and expect others. I mean, I have an idea of how you're going to react when I tell you something. And you'll have that modeled in your head as well, my reaction to that. This sounds complicated. It sounds like Inception, but it's really quite simple. That it might be an essential, like language. Language doesn't mean anything until you talk to someone.
Right.
Now you're dealing with an exchange. And now my words will directly reflect the words you've used with me. No matter what it means or what I think or anything, like I'm talking to you now, and my next bit is going to depend on what you say. No matter what I want it to mean or whatever else, and personality might be like that. It might mean nothing other than how we deal with it socially.
It's a very pragmatic way of looking at personality, because personality in this way of thinking about it is a tool in how to get along with each other.
Yes, but it's not something you're aware of, not you. It's not something one is aware of. I would think, because we're not aware of it in language. Like I'm aware of how language works, but even when I'm talking to you, I'm not planning what I'm saying. It's just coming out of me, right?
Right.
Otherwise, we'd leave much longer gaps between what we're saying. I fondly imagine that I'm thinking through everything I say to you by way of response, that it's thoughtful and something I wanted to say, but it's really a post-event thing. I'll just say afterwards, it just comes out of me now, and I'll say afterwards, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Otherwise, we'd leave remarkably long gaps between everything we say to each other while we consider the next response. We don't. I'm interrupting you every time you say something.
You know, I want to mention someone in the chat, Paul Camish. Tell Barry not all of us Brits think Churchill was a hero.
Yes, I would like to apologize to Paul. That was a generalization. Paul is correct. I do this all the time. I say men do this, women think that, and everybody who corrects me is correct to do so. There are, of course, plenty of British people who are aware of their history. And if I may have implied otherwise in my piece, in which case I apologize. Paul is 100% correct. There's no doubt about it.
Paul's a solid guy.
You know him.
Well, you know, he's been in the chat a bunch of times. I've seen him on different shows.
All right, Paul, sorry about that. You're correct.
You know, it's funny because I grew up with a disability. I didn't talk for a number of years. I went to kindergarten.
Really?
One of the
Does it
reasons
have a name?
It's hypertonia. It's low muscle mass. And so it made me fall down a lot. And one of my guiding principles was don't be yourself.
Hey, there you go. Same as me. But I had to have it told to me.
Yeah, you have to look like the normies. You have to be able to engage with them and interact with them. And so a lot of it for me was trying to reverse engineer how to interact with people socially.
The reverse engineer. Yes, I deeply suspect what I continue to have is weapons grade autism. And I think I just have a social difficulty. And when you have this thing, whatever you want to call it, you do have to reverse engineer.
Right. And you know what makes stand-up good for people like us is because it allows us to be more of ourselves, but in a structured way.
Yes. I never had a problem. I never found it socially awkward to be on a stage with a microphone. People find it absolutely terrifying. Public speaking, they call it. They find it terrifying. But as soon as I have a microphone in front of a crowd, all the symptoms of my social awkwardness go away. And I find it very easy to say, like right now, when I'm talking to you, I'm okay. Because you've given me a microphone and there's a place where you've said, Barry, I want you to talk here and people will want to listen to you. But if I'm at a wedding or something at a table, I'll either take over completely or be very quiet. And if I take over completely, then basically I'm doing this, I'm performing. But if I go very quiet, then people don't like that.
I do one of three things.
Hey, here we go.
Talk a lot. Talk a lot about you, be really quiet, or I find one person, this is my coping mechanism that I generally do. I find one person I can have one really good conversation with. And then after that, I do a lot of drinking, or I do a lot of drinking beforehand, and maybe I just drink a lot to help cope with the social anxiety. But there's typically one or two people I try to get a decent conversation with.
That would work too.
Yeah.
But I don't drink at all.
You don't drink at all?
I never have. No, I do not drink alcohol. Bad Irish person. I don't like potatoes either. I'm a terrible Irish person. I don't drink alcohol at all. Never have. I never saw the point of it.
So how did you implement this piece of advice from your mom?
I would have a natural approach to dealing with people. And my natural approach is to hit them with my best material to see if we can be friends. And that's generally it would be offensive. I will say something which is very far off the radar and I want to see how they bounce. And if they're okay with it, then we can be friends because it means I don't have to watch what I say around them. And if they're not okay with it, then what my mother said to me was made me think maybe that's just a deeply asocial way to live your life. And maybe you should just start by saying something like, hello, how are you? Are you having a pleasant day? And then maybe hit them with the racist thing or the sexist jokes. So I think maybe she was right about that there's a way to present yourself that is not so much inauthentic as... So I suppose I have a fear that if I'm not giving everybody my deepest, darkest thoughts immediately, that there's something inauthentic about the communication, and that's just not true. Because as I said, we do present ourselves differently. Yeah. Like if I was being stopped by a cop on the road for being speeding, I couldn't say to him, "These two guys walk into a bar," Right. I mean, I just have to present myself in a certain way. So if I'm willing to, that's not inauthentic either. That's perfectly reasonable because you're in that particular communication, and just do that with everybody. Don't be yourself. There is no yourself. It doesn't mean anything to say yourself. You decide how you want to be at every point, and that's not inauthentic.
Yeah. I have been pulled into my son's school when he was in high school, and I'm sorry about that. That was my phone going off. My son's the whole meeting was about Mr. Hall, your son. He seems to talk about the things he thinks about,
which sounds like something you'd want to encourage.
You would think to encourage, and so the thing is that the way that he spoke is that he spoke in a skeptical manner of what was the information was being presented to him, but he did it in a very raw manner. Maybe.
I love your son.
Yeah.
Oh, I love him. Oh, the teachers don't like him. That means something's going very right. If you get pulled into an office about that, right? Did you tell me you bought him a medal or something after the meeting?
Well, the funny thing about it, right, is that if people see me on different shows on YouTube, I may be able to restrain with what I'm saying, but a lot of it just leaks out of my face. A lot of it just
Indeed.
it just yeah. And
so, we had the other conversation, remember?
Oh, right. We
volumes to me.
What's that?
Your face was speaking volumes to me. It was wonderful.
Well, I try to cope. I try to cope, and sometimes as a comedian doing comedy, you want to, especially on YouTube, you want to be able to do the expressive face. So
let's go back to the question. You took him to Dairy Queen, right? After this,
I have never told my kids not to be who they are in the world.
Good.
I have also said, and of course, I've also made sure they knew how to fight when they were young.
Physically.
Yeah, physically, and because I grew up in a tough neighborhood. My kids didn't have to grow up in a tough neighborhood, but they went to karate for a number of years, so they could handle.
Oh Lord, okay.
Yeah, so they could handle themselves,
okay.
And I just gave my son the keep up the good work.
Okay, good.
And be who you are. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And, people are going to, if you're thinking well, if you're ahead of the one or two clicks ahead of the curve, then people are not going to like what you have to say, no matter how you say it.
Yes. I suppose the danger is in assuming that, which happens to conspiracy theorists, the danger is in assuming that what makes your ideas good is the fact that people don't like them. Like the Galileo effect. People say they laughed at Galileo. I said, yes, they did laugh at Galileo, but that's not why he was correct.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to be able to be skeptical, and you have to be able to.
I still think your son is amazing, by the way.
What's that?
I still think your son is amazing. That's brilliant.
Thank you. From Paul Camish in the chat, shifting a bit. No problem, Barry. I also served in Northern Ireland. I wasn't comfortable with it. We shouldn't have been there.
Well, if it's any consolation, we weren't comfortable with it either. I'm sorry that if you're in the British Army that they made you do things you didn't want to do, Paul. Sorry about that. That's the nature of an army, isn't it? They make you do things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Unless you're a heartless psychopath.
So back to the advice.
Sorry, Quad.
Back to the advice. Did you utilize it in any way, and did you utilize it to help you get laid? Or
no. Turns out nothing can help me get laid. But I did utilize it in general when I dealt with people. And anybody who knows me from university will find this surprising. That was a moderated version of my real personality. How you saw me in university, that was me dialing it down. Okay, so just to let you know, and now I'm a lot better because now I've come to after reading some more philosophy and psychology, I've come to the understanding that, as I said earlier, the concept of a personality may not be coherent at all, so I don't feel bad about it. I'll just do whatever I like and I don't care anymore.
I've taken a couple of psychology courses in personality, and if anything, I think your model is close to, or not how it really is that, this idea of personality is not monolithic. It isn't
and
something.
People will think to themselves, what am I like? What am I like as a person? But when you think about other people, like let's say somebody who's not entirely in your very close friends list, but you'll have a bunch of people, like maybe hundreds of people on the slightly outer ring, right? When you think about them, you're going to have 2 or 3 traits in mind. Nobody has 2 or 3 traits.
Yeah.
That's a ludicrous thing to think about. You think I don't do it? Of course I do. That's how our human brains are. That's Bob. He's funny, he's good with dogs, and he's this. No, he's not. Why am I doing that to Bob? That's an act of violence I'm committing on Bob because my brain refuses to let me engage with the complicated network of traits that everybody has. And I certainly wouldn't like if somebody saw me as the guy who was good at dogs or the guy who's funny or the whatever. Nobody's like that. So maybe personality doesn't mean anything. What am I like as a person? I don't know. I'm whatever I am to people. Well, however people respond to me, that's my personality. And It's not that they control it, it's that that's the reality. How are we doing for time? Are we all right?
Oh, yeah. We're fine. We're fine. I was just thinking about personality and...
don't get too deep into it, man. It's going to break your brain. It's deeply hurtful and injurious to anybody who thinks they have an individual sense of self.
Well, we could easily talk about free will, too, and about how...
I've decided that everything is just stuff that happens. I'll tell you, don't take things personally. This is stuff I got from other people, not my mother. Try to see things as things that happen, not things that are happening to you. Like a traffic jam is something that happens. It's not something that's happening to you.
Yeah.
Right. Unless something is definitely happening to you. Like everything, most things are things that just happen, and it's fine. Like other things are gonna happen in another little while, and that'll be fine too. And it sounds kind of defeatist, but maybe that's okay. Like.
You know, what's interesting, and the implication here is this monolithic idea about personality directly feeds into these cognitive fallacies, like thinking about everything is affecting me in this kind of narcissistic sort of way.
Yes. And I do it. I'm not above it. Like, I don't want people to think that I'm above it. This happens to me all the time, where I think that something's happening to me, and I kind of get so, well, why is this? Why me? Why not me?
Yeah, indeed. And when you don't have this kind of such a hardened view, and you know what, when people do have, and I'm sure that you've seen this too, when people do have this really hard way of thinking about themselves, they become more brittle, don't they? And less able to cope with things.
But it's work. To get out of that is work. Like if I didn't think about this regularly, I would become that. And I can feel myself becoming like that sometimes, saying I'm this kind of person, which is a ludicrous thing to say for somebody who's just told you all the things I just told you in the last 10 minutes. I am this kind of person, and therefore this is expected of me. And that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Why would I think that? But I do all the time. It's work. It's work. Philosophy is work. And once you are being aware of yourself is work. You don't just wake up one morning and say, oh, this is how philosophy works, and never think about it again.
Do you? So it's very interesting, and I'm just thinking about you and this idea of personality, because it allows you, because people on the spectrum, we like things in certain kinds of ways. We are.
Are you in the spectrum as well?
Well, I got tendencies. My boy has tendencies. My daughter has tendencies. We have tendencies.
Okay,
back in I wasn't actually diagnosed with a disability.
Either, but I mean, the real life is real life.
Yeah. But the idea about having this idea, and like I said, empirically, justified view of personality, it actually allows, I think, you to have a less rigid idea about who you are and more flexibility in day-to-day life.
I would hope so, especially when you read enough philosophy and enough psychology, I think you are possessed of a desire to become a tool of weaponized empathy in the world. When you read enough, you want to just be as kind as possible to as many people as you can in your daily life, because you realize that the world is full of suffering and people going through all sorts of horrible bullshit that you will never know about, and they'll snap at you and they'll regard you negatively, and just don't respond. Just look, this is something that's happening. This person is being unkind to me, but it's not something happening to me. This is just something that's happening. This person is saying unkind things to me, but it's not like something I'm going to take personally. I'm going to say, look, this person's having a bad day, or some people are having a bad life. And you just have to be kind. Sorry.
Weaponized empathy, is that something you just came up with, or is that something that's been in your back pocket and you bring it out every once in a while? Because I really like it.
It's been in my back pocket and I bring it out once in a while. And I got it from, but I did invent the phrase, as far as I know. Please don't Google it and prove me wrong. But to my knowledge, I've invented it because I think it's important. And I think if you do 1 year of philosophy, you'll be thinking, oh, look, this person is committing an ad hominem fallacy. This person is doing this person is that. You can see all the things. But if you do like a bunch of years of philosophy, you're thinking, I do this, I do that. I am committing ad hominem fallacy. I'm treating this person unfairly. It's a completely different view if you read enough. And I assume this, the same is true with psychology. You realize everybody's going through these things. You become pathologically non-judgmental if you read enough about these things. And I think, don't you want us all to be weaponized empathy? A phrase I have used before, so you asked me that question. Just want empathy pushed out into the world. Why not?
Yeah.
Because it's enough of the opposite. Like that they have that covered. Like nasty stuff, that's covered.
Mm.
You know, we don't need to add to that to make things worse for people. And I do realize it makes me sound sanctimonious, but I'm not above being nasty to people.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So afterwards, I just have to think, well, that was a terrible thing. Now, I do a terrible thing also. I never apologize to people because I have this ego. But what I will say is that I shouldn't have said that. And I'm going to try not to do that in the future. That was a bad thing I said to you. I shouldn't have said that.
Well, you know what I've done is that, I mean, for me, what has helped for me is to figure out the different steps, reverse engineering what a good apology is, and trying to do enact that whenever I do think. Now, I don't do it a lot in the moment because I get hot.
How is it possible?
Yeah, but
with heightened emotion. Oh, yeah. No,
yeah.
You come back a few days later and you say, "Look, I did wrong."
Yeah, I did. This is what I did wrong. I'm sorry.
You go as far as that, do you?
Yeah, well, it's a different stage, you know.
I'll be honest, my issue is I've offended so many people and been so unkind, unconsciously, because of this weapons-grade autism. I've said so many horrible things to so many people that if I was going to start apologizing, I'd never finish, and I can't set a precedent. But I can say that I shouldn't have said those things.
Right.
That I was unkind, and it's not just like I used to say, well, you've taken it unkindly. No, I did that, you know. It's not about how you took it. I said an unkind thing, even if I didn't mean to.
I gave my kids a blanket apology, and I said, this is my one big apology. And if I ever do anything crappy, or when I do something crappy, you can just refer back to this one apology right here, and that should cover it for the rest of your life.
Lazy bastard. You just don't want to do the work. You don't want to do the work. That's okay. I mean, it's okay. We're allowed. No, not lazy. Different word. Efficient. You efficient bastard. Yeah. You don't want to do the work with your own kids. Well, I hope you feel happy about that.
I feel very content. Kevin Lentini in the chat says, I was diagnosed with ADD as a kid. My son has been diagnosed with ASD.
Does he mean the same thing? Does he mean the different things, or?
I think it's some, you know,
the attention deficit disorder and ASD, autism spectrum disorder. Is that where we're going with?
Yeah. Yes. That sounds right. If Kevin's in the chat, he can clarify.
Somebody go figure.
But I definitely have the ADD that's in the sense that I just gaze off. Like I can hold my attention for short periods of time.
Yes.
And then I just kind of drift off. And my son has that too, quite a bit.
It's a focus issue, I think.
The focus issue. Yeah.
Have you ever taken medication for it?
Coffee, does that count?
Cheap speed, yeah. Particularly speed is focus in a bottle. And if you have this problem, it focuses you right into whatever you're doing. And if you don't have this problem, speed just makes you jumpy.
Yeah. You know, what I do is that I actually drink coffee, which I just did. And whenever I do what I consider to be a neurologically difficult task or a complicated task, like before I start reading or I start writing, I will have a cup of coffee so that I'm good for a set period of time and I can focus. And
psychological effect too.
Oh yeah, definitely. There is a definite placebo, just getting the whole in the zone kind of vibe.
I'm a big fan of selling myself placebos because I've discovered that being aware of the placebo effect doesn't really mitigate the effect of it at all. Like even if you're aware, it still works. And so I use them as much as possible.
That's wise. You know, I had a psychology teacher who repeatedly said, you have to love your pill.
Meaning,
so if there is a medication that you're taking, you should wrap your mind around not hating it, around liking it, and hoping to amplify that.
You said that people need to get their heads around it because you know what happens to this is going to get dark. Are you okay to get dark in the next sentence? Okay. People who have like really bad emotional psychiatric problems where they want to kill themselves. They take these medicines, they stop wanting to kill themselves. They think, oh, I'm okay now. They stop taking the medicine because they think the medicine as exactly what you said. They think it's something shameful. They think they lose control of themselves. This isn't the real me when I'm on this medicine. But man, like learn to love it, like you said with the guy, assuming it's not really screwing you up too much.
Right.
It's all right. Like it's okay, you know?
That what you just said about staying on your medication, and if you want to leave it, you have to do it under supervision. I've seen a lot of people just go off their medication and without supervision, and it ends up disastrously.
Yeah. It's a rough thing. It's a rough thing. But I try when I talk to people like this. I have, of course, friends who are on medication, and I say, like the sign on the cliff, the old joke. Everything turns into a joke. The darkest stuff turns into a joke when you're a comedian, right? There's a joke about the sign on the cliff that says "Warning, Cliff," because people were falling off, and then nobody fell off for years, so they took the sign away. Right? Problem solved, right? But it's like that with the medication. Leave the sign up there, man. It's fine, right? Don't feel bad about the sign.
Right. Paul says in the chat, if I'm interested in a subject, I can give all my time to it. And if I'm not interested, I drift off in 5 minutes. School was a big problem for me. Yeah, my son had a big problem about that too. If he was really interested.
That's not ADD. ADD is drifting off when you're interested in it. I think if you're interested in something, if you're not interested in something and you don't commit to it, I think that's just good. Like people say things, oh, you have to have motivation. Why should you have motivation for something that's a complete waste of your time? Like, why would anybody be motivated to do calculus if you're not going to join NASA? Like, oh, you have to be self-motivated. Why? That's another way of, to me, that's a form of mental illness. To talk yourself into being interested in something that you don't give a shit about. That's anti-human energy. It's anti the human animal. And I understand in standardized education, you don't have much option. I get that. But I wouldn't frame it in terms of something that's a problem. Like, I drift off when I don't care about something too, and I'm fine with it. I'm happy about drifting off so I can drift towards something I want to put my attention into. Right?
Right.
Jess.
Saying used to hate taking meds, but I've stopped before, and it was a terrible thing. I've learned to love my meds now. Very good.
Yes. We live and grow, right? We live and learn, and we grow.
That's it.
Good for you, Jess.
Barry, this has been a great conversation, dude.
Fantastic. Yeah, we had fun, right?
Yeah, it was fun, informative. I laughed, and I think I might have learned something there.
Oh, stop you. I might have learned something.
Oh, well, I don't know. That was all just by accident then. That was just by accident. Barry, where can people find you online, sir?
I didn't prepare for this. I should have, shouldn't I? I'm on Twitter, Solo Woonie. Remember what I said about hitting you with my best material, the offensive stuff, before you check me out online. I'm on Twitter, Solo Woonie, SOLO1Y. And I'm on Tumblr, Solo Woonie, and YouTube, and pretty much anywhere you need to find anyone. I'll be there as /Solo Woonie at the end of it.
Fantastic. Everyone in the chat, thanks for showing up. Thanks for contributing. This has been...
I liked the real-time interactions.
Yeah. All right, well, take care. Take care, everyone. Be safe. Have a good holiday. If you're celebrating anything now for a holiday, take care.